Hello and welcome to my short presentation that I call Sakai, the first 10 years and the next 10 years, of course, with an asterisk. And I'm, of course, Charles Severance. I'm from the University of Michigan School of Information, and I'm also Blackboard Sakai Chief Strategist. So it's almost 10 years ago. Certainly the word Sakai was being bandied around at the University of Michigan in April, May 2003, and so here we are in 2013, so it's almost 10 years. The kickoff, of course, was the grand announcement in the Chronicle of Higher Education back in the days that the notion of universities banding together and making open source was a bit of a rare notion. So it got a lot of attention. There's things that have come since, like Kuali and other things, but Sakai got a lot of attention. We had really high hopes when we started. We believed that somehow we were going to be special and we were going to be different. Now I'd like to call to your attention something I just saw in a really cool blog post from Darcy Norman. It's his law of e-learning tool convergence, and that is any tool, no matter how openly designed, will eventually become indistinguishable from a learning management system once a threshold of supported use cases has been reached. The Dr. Chuck corollary to this is that with Blackboard as the market leader, if you're in the business long enough and successful, sooner or later you'll have many of the features of Blackboard in your product. And we thought that we could see learning completely different, but we found that to compete with the market, we had to be in many ways like the rest of the market. We started from a very different perspective than all the other learning management systems. We really thought at our core that collaboration was the essence of learning. And it is, and we've been very successful with that. But the problem is that if you really want to compete with the other learning management systems, you slowly but surely have to adopt and support the same features that they do, plus all the features that you hold dear to your use cases that are special. So I love this squid diagram, as it's called, from Phil Hill, who was at the time with the Delta Initiative, and it of course goes through the years, and our 10-year period is kind of like 2003 through 2013, and you see Sakai down here, and you see Sakai small and ends up with 4 or 5% market share, and you can see that Moodle has got some market share, and Blackboard certainly has had acquisitions that they've sort of built up market share. If you look at today's market share in 2013, 2014, Moodle's very strong, Desire to Learn's very strong, Blackboard Learn still has sort of the single largest part of the marketplace, but Sakai has held strong. And so this has been our playground for the past 10 years. If you go back to the time before, right? If you go back to the time before 2002, 2003, you see that a lot of people were building their own homegrown learning management systems. And to a high degree, the homegrown learning management systems is what drove the Sakai and the Moodle as well. And then things like Desire to Learn and Moodle also have benefited from taking market share away from Blackboard. You can see that they're getting larger. Sakai really hasn't taken that much market share away from Blackboard per se. I mean, there has been some, but not so much. It's really the Moodle Rooms and Moodle Rooms, Desire to Learn, and now Instructure that's really taking market share away from Blackboard more than Sakai. And that's part of the reason that Sakai and Blackboard are kind of more friends than enemies than you might think. So this has been our playground for all this time. And we can be very proud. This was a recent data published at the EDUCAUSE last year, or 2012 EDUCAUSE. And there we are, right? 6% market share. I think this is heavily United States. More market share than Instructure. And, Desire to Learn, Blackboard, Moodle, and Desire to Learn are ahead of us. They are sort of very organized and well-funded. Moodle is very well funded because of its Moodle's Partners program that raises quite the funds. And so really in this whole thing, the only real true open source that's not sort of gathering funds and running things centrally is Sakai. So I think we can be very proud that 10 years later we have a non-trivial and stable market share like that. Now, one of the things that sort of, especially for example, as we see these MOOCs coming out, the Gartner hype cycle applies to everything. And if you take a look at Sakai, if you heard me talk before, Sakai had this problem from the moment in 2004, where as soon as we were announced, the hype went crazy. You know, in the first year, we just rocketed upwards. It was exciting times. And it was also time where our software was not nearly worthy of the hype it was getting. Our 1.0 release was not much of a learning management system, and our 1.5 release was not much better. Our 1.5 to our 2.0 release, it's really what saved us, right? The 2.0 release was a nice piece of software. We got rid of most of the really horrible things that we were doing in the 1.0 and the 1.5 code base, moved more towards a clean Java servlet pattern. And if we hadn't made it 2.0, I think that we wouldn't even be having this conversation if 2.0 had not come out. And then kind of 2.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were just sort of finishing kind of the gaps in 2.0 that we had erased and fixing things up. And after 2.5, there was kind of, between the 2.5 and the 2.6 time was when the open academic environment started being discussed. And from the CLE's perspective, this was kind of the beginning of a bit of a dark age, because the perception of the Sakai 2X CLE was kind of going downwards, right? And so there was talk that the 2.7 would be the last release ever of Sakai. That was some of the discussion, and so we went sort of into this trough of disillusionment where we thought that the Sakai 2.x was done, and OAE would at some point replace it and rewrite it, be rewritten and replace the CLE. And of course that didn't come to pass for a lot of unfortunate reasons. But at some point I think it became more clear that the CLE was going to remain our most relevant product, at least the product that was supporting millions of people every single day. And the 2.8 release was kind of a turning point where we kind of said, okay, it's time to reinvest. But the problem was we were sort of stuck. We had a lot of people stuck in the 2.6, 2.7 time frame in the version. And still we do have a lot of people stuck in the 2.6, 2.7. And the 2.8 really wasn't much better product than 2.6 and 2.7 were. And so there was sort of this notion that we might not have much of a future. And then Sakai 2.9 came out, and Sakai 2.9, took us almost 2 years to produce, but it's a nice piece of software. And Sakai 2.9 sort of is kind of where we should have been, right? If we'd have just sort of drawn a straight line, Sakai 2.9 is a great place to start. If we'd have had Sakai 2.9, what we have right now, if we'd have had it about here, the same functionality, this whole thing could be very different, right? We could have easily a very dominant market share. But it just took us that long to get Sakai 2.9. So that's kind of my sort of mapping on the Gartner hype cycle of our release. But what's good is this is kind of like the plateau of sort of effectiveness, and that is we are well poised as we look into the future towards a situation where our hype, our marketing, and our actual product are very much in alignment, and we can move forward gently and clearly and do really good things going forward.